Welcome, dear students. Very good morning to all of you.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning. In the last lecture, we have seen some of the examples of transporters. Okay, we have seen the example of sodium, potassium, or NAK ATPase, that is an antiporter. Okay, and we have seen that in this particular system of transport, which utilizes ATP molecule. Okay, because it is primary active type of transport, where ATP molecule is directly used for the transport of both the sodium and potassium ions. And here we have seen that there is a movement of two potassium ions inside the cell, and there is a movement of simultaneous movement of three sodium ions outside the cell. Okay, so it is a co-transport phenomenon we have seen. And we have seen diagrammatically also how the sodium ions bind from inside. Okay, the protein is in a particular conformation. Okay, and then when there is phosphorylation, then the sodium ions are released on the outside. Okay, so that is because the affinity of the enzyme becomes less for sodium, and therefore sodium goes out. And when there is dephosphorylation, then the potassium ions bind, and they are released inside the cell. Okay, two potassium inside and three potassium outside. Now, I have also told you that there is a particular poison, there is a toxin of present in certain plants. Okay, that is called as wabane. And this wabane actually locks the protein transporter in such a way that the sodium ions are locked inside the transporter. Okay, therefore the sodium ions cannot move out of the cell from inside to outside. And because of that, this happens in the animal cells. Okay, and that is how the animals are poisoned, right? And that the presence of that poison in the plant is sensed by the animals, and that discourages the herbivores from eating the plants. There is another poison which is present in the corals. Okay, you know what is a coral? They are present in the oceans, ocean beds. Okay, so palytoxin is another potent inhibitor, a toxin which blocks the ATPase in such a way that it becomes accessible from both the sides. That is to say, the sodium and potassium ions can freely flow from the transporter without any, you can say, there is no specificity as such. Okay. As we have seen that the transporter can transport the sodium ions from inside to the outside and potassium ions from outside to the inside. But that kind of specificity is lost, and therefore it becomes permeable to both the kinds of ions in both the ways, both the sides. Okay, so therefore the potential gradient also is lost, right? Then I have put a question here whether this particular enzyme, that is ATPase, is also an ATP synthase. And the answer is no, because this enzyme cannot make ATP molecules. It is only involved in the transport of co-transport of sodium and potassium ions, and for that it requires ATP molecule. Okay, so ATP is hydrolyzed. It is not synthesized by this particular enzyme or transporter. Then here we'll also see how this particular toxins can be used in the medical field. Okay, so whenever somebody is suffering from the heart muscle contraction, okay, or heart attack, then this particular formulation, which is called digitalis. Okay, digitalis contains wabane as well as it contains digitoxygenin, okay, together. And the mode of action of this particular medicine is that, or drug is that, it can block the sodium transport in the heart muscle. Okay, but when it blocks the heart, when it blocks the sodium transport, then the sodium ion level inside the heart muscle will increase. Okay, there is accumulation of sodium ions inside the heart muscles, and because of that increase in the concentration or elevation of the sodium concentration, it activates another transporter which is called as the sodium calcium antiporter. Okay, now when this particular antiporter is activated, then what happens is sodium ions will go outside and calcium ions will come inside. Okay, so calcium is transported inside, and because of that it will strengthen the heart muscles. Okay, and therefore the contractions in the heart muscle will happen properly. Okay, so this particular medical formulation is actually containing the poison. Okay, Wabane. Then we come to some other examples of transporters. So here we have the calcium pumps or calcium uniporters. Okay, these are also P type of uniporters. That is because they are present in the plasma membrane, and they are also present in other membranes such as the membrane of the endoplasmic reticulum and the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Okay, the function of these pumps is again to maintain low concentration of calcium inside the cells. Okay, that is to say, for example, if it is a plasma membrane calcium pump, then it will drive away the calcium from the cytoplasm. Okay, so calcium goes out from the cytoplasm, it goes out of the cell. Okay, and that is how the calcium concentration is maintained on a lower side inside the cell. That is, say, less than 100 nanomole concentration of calcium is maintained inside the cells. Now, what is the reason for maintaining such a low concentration of calcium in the cell? The reason is that if the calcium ion concentration increases in the cell beyond a certain level, that is in the range of millimole concentration, then this calcium is going to bind to the phosphate which are present in the cell, inorganic phosphate. Okay, and that will cause the precipitation of calcium in the form of calcium phosphate precipitate, and that precipitate is not good for the cell, it is harmful for the cell. Okay, and therefore the cell will always try to move the calcium out of the cell, that is by using these uniporters which are called as the P type calcium pumps. Okay, so when I use the word here pump, it means that it is going to use ATP as the energy source, right? So it is a kind of primary active transport. Have you all understood what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, then there is another kind of a calcium pump which is present in the endoplasmic reticulum. So that is called as ER calcium pump. And here the function of the ATPase or the calcium pump is to cause the pumping of calcium ions into the endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, so in any case, the calcium which is present inside the cytoplasm is going into the endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, there is another pump which is called the sarcoplasmic reticulum calcium pump, and here this particular transporter will cause the movement of calcium ions from the cytoplasm into the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Okay, the important thing here is that it is again a 10 times membrane spanning protein. The molecular weight is about 1 lakh Dalton. Okay, that is 100 kd, and it has got 3 cytoplasmic domains which connect the which are formed by loops. Okay, and the loops connect the transmembrane helices. I'll go to the next slide to show you the diagram of this particular transporter. This is the sarcoplasmic reticulum calcium pump. Okay, and it has got 10 transmembrane helices which surround it is here, the 10 transmembrane helices are here, and they are surrounding the central core, that is the central channel, and through this channel the movement of calcium ions is taking place. Okay, now if you look at this particular picture clearly, let me magnify that image. Okay, can you see that? These are the
Yes.
transmembrane alpha helical segments. Okay, these are spanning the membrane, and there are 2 such transmembrane helices which are short. Okay, they are actually shortened helices, and then you see some green colored dots here. So these green colored regions are the places where calcium ions can bind inside that channel. Okay, so what happens is there is one N domain. Can you see it here? The N domain. Okay, this is the N domain. There is one A domain here, and there is again a p domain at the center here. Okay, n domain is here. The n domain actually is the one which binds the ATP molecule. Okay, so it is a nucleotide binding domain, and therefore it is called as the n domain. Okay, so what will happen is ATP molecule will bind here on the n domain, and because of that, there is a particular aspartic acid residue which is called ASP 351. Okay, so the number of this amino acid residue is 351 in the chain of amino acids. Okay, and it is this particular residue which will undergo phosphorylation. So when ATP binds the N domain, this aspartic acid residue here, it is shown here. So this will get phosphorylated, and when it gets phosphorylated, then it will cause a certain structural changes in that domain, and because of that, this domain will move by about 20 angstrom unit. Can you see this here? It undergoes a kind of twisting, okay, by 20 degree, okay, 20-degree rotation. And because of that rotation, this N domain will go towards what is called as the A domain. Okay, so essentially what happens is the ATP binding site actually moves towards the A domain. And because of that movement, this A domain will get activated. Okay, and that activation will cause the rotation of A domain by about 90 degree. Can you see this written here? 90-degree movement of the A domain. Okay, so A domain twists, and because of that twisting, this particular site within the membrane, okay, this calcium ion binding site in the membrane will undergo a kind of a movement, and that movement will alter the affinity of calcium ions. Okay, so calcium ions are binding from the cytoplasm. Okay, here it is the cytoplasm here. Okay, and because of the movement of the A domain by 90 degree, the affinity of this particular helices for the calcium ions will become lesser. It will be lowered, and because of the lowered affinity, the calcium ions will actually go inside. Okay, from the cytoplasm it will go into the endoplasmic reticulum. Is it okay? So that is how the movement of calcium ions will take place from this transporter from the cytoplasm to the endoplasmic reticulum. Now I have asked a question here: is this a uniporter or antiporter, or is it a symporter? So can you give me that answer? What type of a transporter is it?
Sir, biporter.
What did you say? I'm asking you whether it is a uniporter, antiporter, or symporter.
Antiporter, sir.
Antiporter. Why?
Yes,
Because both the side of the movement of a molecule is from both the sides.
See, antiporter is the one where there are two ions involved or two molecules are transported in the opposite direction. Is it clear to you? Here only one molecule, one ion is being transported. Okay, from the cytoplasm to the endoplasmic reticulum. Only unidirectional, one directional flow is there. Have you understood, Aishwarya?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what is it now? Is it uniporter, antiporter, or symporter?
Uniporter.
Uniporter. Okay, symporter is where two ions or two molecules are transported in the same direction. Antiporter is where two ions or two molecules are transported in the opposite direction. Okay, and uniporter is the one where only one ion is involved. It is transported from one side to the other side in one single direction. Okay, so this transporter, calcium transporter, is a uniporter. Then the other question which I would like to ask you is whether it is facilitated diffusion, or is it simple diffusion, or is it active transport? Simple diffusion, facilitated diffusion, or active transport? Nobody wants to answer.
Active transport, sir.
Active transport, why? Why is it active transport? Amol?
Since sir
Yes, yes.
ATP is involved, so it is active
Yes,
transport.
yes, ATP is hydrolyzed. Okay, you can see the ATP binding site is there. ATP binds here, it gets hydrolyzed. Because of that, energy is provided to the molecule. It undergoes conformational change. There's a 20-degree change. There is a 20-degree rotation in the N domain. Because of that rotation, it moves towards the A domain. That is why it activates the A domain. A domain will undergo a rotation in 90-degree. Okay, because of that rotation, there is an effect on this site, the calcium binding site. Okay, it will lose the affinity for calcium. Okay, and therefore the this site actually will be open on the other side into the endoplasmic reticulum, and therefore the calcium ions will be actually released in the endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, so because of that, it is definitely a primary active transport, right? Then there are other type of P-type ATPases. For example, there are the parietal cells in the stomach, which you might have already studied in your 11th and 12th standard. Okay, so these parietal cells, they have the function of these cells is to pump the protons inside and create acidic conditions in the stomach. Okay, so that particular movement is by the P-type ATPases, which are actually antiporters. Okay, so they pump in the protons in the stomach cells and they pump out the calcium, the potassium ions. Okay, so that is why it is an antiporter kind of mechanism. Then there are other type of ATPases which are called as the F-type ATPases. Now these are reversible ATP-driven proton pumps. I think we have already seen the function of the F-type ATPases when we studied photosynthesis, when we studied respiration. Do you remember that? So these are uniporters again because they carry out the pumping of protons in one direction. Okay, from the high concentration to the low concentration, from the low concentration to the high concentration. Is it? Or high concentration to the low concentration? What is it?
High to low.
Yes, from the high concentration to the low concentration because they're carrying energy with them because of the proton concentration. Okay, and that energy itself is used for synthesis of ATP molecule. But if there is a reverse movement, if the movement is from low concentration to the high concentration, then they are actually going to be ATPases because they are going to use ATP molecule for that kind of transport. Okay, so we have already studied in detail the function, the structure as well as function of the F-type ATPases, and therefore I'm not going to read this slide. Okay, even this slide we have seen already. Then there are ATPases which are also called as V-type ATPases. Now these ATPases are present in the vacuoles. Okay, the function of these ATPases is to transport protons inside the vacuoles. Okay, the hydrolytic vacuoles such as the lysosomes, the Golgi complex, the secretory vesicles in animal cells. So all these vacuoles, they contain a high concentration of protons, and that is because the ATPases are used, the V-type ATPases are used to bring the protons inside the vacuoles and then to make the contents of the vacuoles acidic. Okay, and because of these acidic vacuoles, what happens is the food material is broken down, it is digested, hydrolyzed. Okay, in fact, you might have also studied about the phagolysosomes in your immunology. Have you studied phagolysosomes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it is here that the bacterial cells or any pathogen which comes inside the organism in the individual, those pathogens are phagocytosed inside these cells, macrophages, for example. Okay, and inside the cells, the antigens are hydrolyzed. The pathogenic organism is degraded, isn't it? Hydrolyzed. That is because of the acidic contents of the vacuoles, right? So these are again uniporters, which can transport only the protons inside the vacuoles. Then there is another very huge group of transporters, which are called as the ABC transporters. Okay, this ABC stands for ATP binding cassette. Okay, ATP binding cassette. That is, these are ATP binding proteins. Okay, ABC doesn't stand for Amitabh Bachchan Corporation. It is ATP binding cassette. Is it clear? So this is a large family of ATP dependent transporters or proteins, which are able to carry out variety of functions. Okay, they can pump amino acids, they can pump different peptides, proteins, metal ions, lipids, bile salts, drug molecules. So all these different molecules can be transported out of the cells against a concentration gradient. Okay, so when I say against a concentration gradient, it definitely means that they require ATP. Okay, they hydrolyze ATP, and this is again an example of what is called as the primary active transport. Okay, now these particular transport proteins have a characteristic feature, that is they have a special domain. Okay, that domain is the region where the ATP molecule binds to them. Okay, therefore they are called ATP binding cassettes. Now these ATP binding cassettes contain some essential domains, which are called as the NBDs. Okay, NBD stands for the nucleotide binding domain. So like we have seen here in the earlier example, I'll just show you that this is the domain which binds ATP. Okay, so similarly, these ATPases also contain domains which bind the ATP molecule, and these domains are called as the nucleotide binding domains. Okay, NBDs. Okay. Now these ATP ABC transporters are present in plasma membrane. They are also found in the endoplasmic reticulum. They are also found in other membranes, such as those which are present in the mitochondria, which are present in the lysosomes. Okay, and the main function is that most of them can act as pumps, and some of them can act as channels. So what is the difference between the pump and a channel? Can anybody recollect this? What is the difference between a pump and a channel?
Sir, pump requires energy.
Yes, and channel?
Sir, channel, it is a drive-through.
It is a?
I mean, pass by or drive-through.
See, the main difference between a pump and a channel is not just the ATP molecule. Okay, pumps are those which use ATP to transport a particular molecule or ion against a concentration gradient. That phrase is very important, against the concentration gradient. Whereas a channel protein is a one which may use ATP, not that it doesn't use ATP, but it uses ATP for a different reason. Okay. The role of a channel is that it will carry out the transport of a molecular ion along the concentration gradient. Okay, that is from high concentration to low concentration. But a pump will carry the transport of a molecule from the low concentration to a high concentration. Are you getting this point? So channels are involved in facilitated diffusion, but pumps are involved in the active transport. Right? So please try to understand this difference. This is very important. Okay. And there are ion channels which require ATP, but the function of ATP here is the hydrolysis of ATP causes the opening or closing of the channel. Okay. It is not actually the passage of molecules against the concentration gradient. The molecules are going along the concentration gradient. Okay. But the role of ATP here is to cause the opening or closing of the channel. That conformational change happens because of ATP. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
So we are going to see one or two examples of channels little later. But before that, I will talk about the nucleotide binding domains. Okay, these are all very similar kinds of protein. That is, the structure is conserved. Okay, that is either in the sequence or in the three-dimensional structure. These proteins are all similar to each other. Okay, most of them can function as motors. Okay. I'll go directly to the next slide where we have some good diagrams here, schematic representations. Can you see this? This is a particular protein, a transporter, which is in the membrane. It has multiple membrane spanning regions, as you can see here. And these are all connected by loops. Can you see the loops here? Okay. And then each of these transporter is associated with an NBD, the red colored region or the green colored structure here. These are called as the nucleotide binding domains. Okay. So it is here that the ATP molecule will bind. And you can see it here also when the ATP molecules bind here to the NBDs, then that will cause a conformational change. Okay. So here it was from inside, it was open like this. Just a minute. It was open like this. And when ATP molecules bind here to the NBDs, then it causes a different conformational movement or conformational change. And therefore that particular transporter will now open on the outside. Okay. So initially it was inside. When ATP binds, it becomes open outside. And then this particular molecule in pink color, can you see that? That is the ion, or that is a molecule which is being transported from the inside to the outside. Okay. So because of this movement, okay, inside, outside, okay, that movement is causing the binding of a particular molecule from the inside first, and then it is exposed to the outside, and therefore it is released outside. Okay. So that movement, that opening or closing is because of ATP binding to this particular NBD. Okay. You can see it here also in this diagram. A particular molecule is binding to the channel, okay, at a particular place, and then ATP binds to the NBD, and because of binding of ATP to the NBD, that is nucleotide binding domain, it is causing a conformational change in the molecule, so that the molecule or ion under question, it is being transported from inside to the outside. Is it clear? So here they have shown the ribbon structure for different types of transporters, type 1 ABC transporters, type 2 ABC transporters. Of course, I'm not going to go into those details right now. Okay, it is important enough to know that there are nucleotide binding domains. And because of ATP binding to these domains, if it is a channel protein, then the channel will open or close from inside and outside, and therefore the molecule will be transported. Or if it is a pump, then it will actually cause the movement of a particular molecule against the concentration gradient by hydrolysis of ATP. Is it clear? Then there is something called as a major facilitator superfamily. So it is a big family of transporters. There are 28 different families of transporters in this one superfamily. Okay. And the characteristic feature is that all of these transporters have 12 transmembrane domains. Okay. So there are segments in the protein which are spanning the membrane 12 times. Okay. And one of the examples of this transporter is E. coli lactose transporter. Okay, lactose transporter. We will probably see the example of this later. Yeah, it is here. So this is an example of secondary active transport. Okay, do you remember what is secondary active transport? It is a transport in which one of the molecule or one of the ion was already transported by primary active transport. Okay, and that molecule or that ion, when it comes along the concentration gradient, it is going to carry the molecule of our interest, that is, for example, lactose in this particular case. Okay, so let us see how this lactose transporter works. It is also called as lactose permease. I think you have already studied this example sometime in your BSc. Okay, lactose permease. So this is a co-transporter which is proton driven. So when I say proton driven, the protons are going to come from outside to inside, and along with the protons, a molecule of lactose is also going to come inside. Okay, so this is also an example of symport mechanism, symport transport. Okay, this transporter is a single polypeptide chain of about 417 amino acid residues which form a monomer. So it is a monomeric protein, and it is going to transport one proton and one lactose molecule along with it by the mechanism of symport. Okay, now how is this proton gradient formed? Proton gradient is formed by the oxidation of different substrate molecules. We have already seen that earlier, isn't it? So the proton gradient is there across the membrane, and then this proton will come inside through the lactose transporter. Okay, so proton gradient is formed by what is called as the primary active transport. Okay, and when the proton gradient is formed, the protons will enter through the lactose transporter, and when the proton comes through the lactose transporter, the protons are already carrying a lot of energy because of the proton gradient, and with that energy the proton is able to carry a molecule of lactose inside the cell. Okay, so this is called as endergonic accumulation of lactose, which is coupled to exergonic flow of protons into the cell. Okay, why it is endergonic accumulation of lactose? Because the entry of lactose will require energy, and who provides the energy? The energy is provided by the protons, proton motive force. Okay, so that is called as exergonic flow of protons inside the cell, and along with that we have endergonic accumulation of lactose inside the cell. Okay, mechanism wise it is similar to the GLUT1 transporter. Okay, the side of the transporter which is facing outside in the periplasmic space is tightly is closed. Okay, and therefore lactose cannot enter as such. Okay, it is impermeable to lactose, but because of the proton movement, when the proton comes inside that particular channel, okay, then it causes the movement of the domains. Okay, and that is how it will be open to lactose from outside. Lactose will bind. Okay, and because of the binding of lactose, that is a signal for the molecule to open the inside face, and therefore lactose will be transported inside into the cytoplasm. Okay, so there are some more details which are given, which I'm not going to read now. I think you can read it on your own. Okay, for example, it is a 12 times membrane spanning protein. Okay, there are 12 transmembrane alpha helices. The molecular weight is 45,000. Right, the transport is by symport mechanism. Then I'll go to other type of channels which are called aquaporins. So these are the very special transporters which are present for carrying water molecules. Now, what happens is earlier it was probably understood that water molecules can be transported to the membrane on their own. Okay, by diffusion, by simple diffusion. Okay, but later on it was understood, it was discovered that there are special type of channels which are there for water molecules, and these molecules can carry water. These transporters can carry water molecules at a very, very high rate. Okay, and that is through a special type of transporters which are called as the aquaporins. Okay, now these aquaporins are mechanosensitive channels. That is what they are able to sense some mechanical pressure, that is the osmotic pressure. Okay, so in response to the osmotic pressure, for example, if there is a high salt concentration outside, okay, you know what is high salt concentration. Okay, so when there is high salt concentration outside, then the water molecules will move from inside to outside. That is high concentration of water to low concentration of water, and that movement is through the aquaporin. If the conditions are opposite, that is if the high salt concentration is present inside the cell, okay, then water molecules from outside will come inside the cell. Okay, and that movement is through the aquaporins. That is because the rate of transport of oxygen molecules is very, very high. Just to give you an example, I have written here that one single transporter, one single aquaporin molecule can transport one molecule at a time. Okay, one water molecule at a time at a rate of about 3 billion water molecules per second. Okay, per second, 3 billion water molecules can be transported one by one through one single aquaporin molecule. Okay, so this particular rate of diffusion is much greater than simple diffusion also, right? And the function of these aquaporins is to regulate the osmotic pressure. Okay, the function is to regulate the pressure inside the cell, right? So here are some more details which are given. Again, I'm not going to read everything. Okay, it is just important for you to know the name of a transporter and the function of the transporter. Okay, and the fact that it is a uniporter. Okay, only the water molecules are transported across these transporters. Then there are ion selective channels which are very selective for certain ions only. For example, the calcium channels are selective only for calcium. Okay,